Good day, Internet. This is DTNS Live for Thursday, January 16th, 2025. From Studio Animal House, I'm Sarah Lane.
From Columbus, Ohio, I'm Robb Dunewood.
And I'm the show's producer, Roger Chang.
Daily Tech News Show Live is made possible by its listeners. Thanks to all of you, including Philip Less, Howard Yermish, John Atwood, and new patrons James, Patrick, Christopher, what is that? Javon? And Kevin.
Javon.
I think that's Javon. Javon and Kevin.
We are on a patron roll this week.
We are.
So
we definitely are.
Thanks to everybody who are new patrons. Thanks for joining us. And welcome to DTNS Live. This is the show where we discuss the tech news to help us all understand everything a little better together. How are we all doing? How are you, Robb Dunewood?
I would say that I'm refreshed, but my vacation was not nearly long enough to get refreshed after all that walking I did at CES last week, but I'm all right. I'm good. My feet no longer hurt.
At least on a cruise ship, you didn't have to do, well,
you didn't have to cook.
It was a big ship. There was a lot of walking on the ship, so I did not recover as much as I thought I would.
But the food was good, right?
The food was awesome.
Roger, when's the last time you were on a cruise?
Never, because to me, they're giant floating petri dishes of disease.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
They're just they're like a hotel
do not
across with
expect
a
to see
water
Roger
park.
Chang on a cruise ship near you.
Yeah.
Willingly. You do not expect it. I mean, the only ship I've ever visited and been on board is the Queen Mary, and that's because it's cemented in the dock.
It's basically just a building now.
Yes.
I took a cruise in high school. My grandma took a couple of us on a cruise. It was very fun. And then the only other time I've been on a cruise, it was raining at sea, and I slipped on the wet dock outside, and I broke my foot.
That stinks.
Yeah.
Well, I will say my cruise was it was very good. It was a little chillier than I expected it to be, but it is January, so it was a fun time. No one got sick.
Well, that is good to hear. We have a lot of news to get to, so let's start with the quick hits.
Nintendo unveiled the Nintendo Switch 2 Thursday in a first look video introducing the new hardware. The Switch 2 looks a lot like the original, but bigger. There's a new USB-C port alongside the 3.5mm headphone jack. The kickstand now has a U-shaped structure for added stability. The dock is rounder, and like the original Switch, a separate controller grip will be available for snapping the Joy-Cons together. Switch 2 will play Switch 2 exclusive games, but is also backwards compatible with both physical and digital Switch games. No official launch date was announced, but other than 2025, but Nintendo did announce a Switch 2 Direct event on April 2nd, followed by Nintendo Switch 2 experience events in various cities around the world starting April 4th.
So I guess we can safely say April.
Yeah.
Or thereabouts. We will definitely be talking about this quite a bit more as we get closer to that. A new broadband law in New York requires internet providers to offer low-income residents broadband rates of $15 per month for 25 megabits per second or $20 for 200 megabits per second. In response, AT&T announced it discontinued its 5G home internet service, AT&T Internet Air, in the state, starting Wednesday, January 15th. So that was yesterday as of this recording. The company said it's committed to affordable internet nationwide, but New York's rate regulations make it uneconomical to invest in and expand broadband infrastructure.
So they're committed to the thing that they're not doing anymore. That's kind of weird.
We're so committed to this, but not if it affects our bottom line.
Yeah. So a cyber attack on EdTech giant PowerSchool has exposed sensitive personal data of students and teachers, including names, addresses, social security numbers, and historical records dating back years. School districts say they've had inadequate security measures like no multi-factor authentication and claim hackers access far more data than PowerSchool initially disclosed. While the company says the stolen data has been deleted, it hasn't provided evidence back, or it should say it hasn't provided evidence to back that up.
It's been deleted, but we can't prove it.
And I want to know how far back it goes because both my kids used PowerSchool when they were in school.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I know it's a giant. I don't believe I was using, I don't know how long PowerSchool's been in business. I don't know. What about your kids, Roger? They might be too young.
They don't use Power School. They use something else, and the name escapes me, and it's really annoying because it's half hybrided with Google Docs, so it sort of works, but it really depends on the teacher to proactively put things in it, and if they don't, it's kind of empty.
Got it. Motorola announced the Moto G Power for $300. That's both IP68 and IP69 certified with a 6.8-inch FHD Plus LCD 120 gigahertz, not gigahertz, just hertz display, a 5,000 milliamp battery with wireless charging, and is powered by a MediaTek Dimensity 6300 chipset and 8 gigabytes of RAM, all for $300. The $200 Moto G has IP52 water repellent certification, slightly smaller at 6.7 inches, still an LCD display, no wireless charging, but the same MediaTek chip, but with 4 gigabytes of RAM. The Moto G launches on January 30th, and the Power launches on February 6th.
I will add that the Moto G Power is no joke. Like, it is one of the longest lasting, like on a single charge phones I've ever used.
I mean,
Xiaomi,
the price is right.
Xiaomi officially entered the South Korean market Wednesday. The Xiaomi 14T and Redmi Note 14 Pro 5G are the first two devices to be sold in the country, with other products from Xiaomi's big catalog of tech to follow. South Koreans should start seeing TVs, wearables, and robot vacuums sometime in February. And I saw them last week.
Speaking of tech, LG Display introduced its 4th gen OLED TV displays today, which are brighter than last year's models. Last year's models were pretty bright. I have one of them actually, but they're brighter now. Also more power efficient and less reflective, which is a knock that a lot of people have on OLEDs. And Gadget notes the LG OLED Evo M5 was one of its favorite announcements from CES just earlier this month. The panels can reportedly reach a maximum brightness as high as 4,000 nits. That's according to the company, so mileage may vary, but that's 33% brighter than what was touted in the previous generation panel. Now, I bought a LG OLED TV almost a year ago to the day. So this is not something that I'm in the market for. I mean, it would be great to replace the TV in my bedroom because that thing it's hard to believe it's still standing. But we're not there yet. The pocketbook is not ready. But I'm a fan of LG. I'm definitely a fan of OLED, and I never really cared that much until I had an OLED TV. I was like, LCD, LED, I don't know. I can see the picture. It's fine. I cared more about the sound bar, really. But once I got my OLED TV, I can tell the difference. When I go to someone's house, I'm like, yeah, there's something weird about the color. Like, it's kind of, the blacks are kind of murky. You really can tell the difference depending on the room you're in and, the light that's coming in from outside.
I got my first OLED TV. I think it was 3 years ago, like maybe 2.5 years ago. And it wasn't a brand new TV at the time. It was like, one that was maybe a couple of years old, just because I wasn't trying to spend, a gazillion dollars on it.
Right. Yeah.
And,
a couple of years ago. Yeah.
And it's a big TV. It was the TV that I was supposed to use to replace in my family room. But the problem is that I have a wall of glass in my family room, and it simply is just so dim that you cannot see anything unless you're watching late at night and you turn all the TVs or all the lights off. So we ended up bringing it down to my office. It's literally sitting over to my right, and I love it. The blacks are absolutely black. You can notice that. But the problem that I have is that some of the things that I like to watch on it, like Silo or like Alex Cross, not only is the picture dark because it's not one of these new LGs, it's 33% brighter. It seems like with a lot of TV shows like Silo, which is on Apple Plus, and like Alex Cross, which is on Prime, they are doing things cinematically that just makes the picture dark. So it is a struggle to see anything on this big giant TV that looks really good if you put blackout curtains in your windows and turn everything that emits radiation from it off, so that you're sitting there in complete darkness trying to watch it.
Wasn't it? I don't know. It was the last season of Game of Thrones. I think it was like the first episode of the last season that was this big battle in the dark.
Oh yeah,
and everyone was like, I couldn't see it.
Right.
Just like couldn't see.
There was
the
a
battle.
scene where they went off riding. The riders went off with flaming swords, right, and then they just sort of faded off into the back. That's kind of how all that episode was until like the very end. And it's OLED offers you such a dramatically higher range of contrast, but as Rob said, traditionally, because OLEDs tended to be dimmer than your standard run-of-the-mill LED lights, backlighting on TVs, really hard to see if you have curtains. You don't live in a panic room, and you have windows and stuff. You have to close all the curtains. You got to make sure everything's, even with the curtains closed, the lights still come out through the edges. Right. And having just something slightly brighter does make it enjoyable without you having to silo, pun intended, silo yourself off into your viewing environment.
Yeah, so I am all for these things being 33% brighter. I'm just not ready to buy a new television yet. There is literally, well, I can't say that there's nothing wrong with my OLED because I can't see it unless it is complete darkness. But there's nothing wrong with the TV. It is brand new, and so I'm not ready to go spend that kind of money yet. But because if these things keep progressively getting brighter and brighter as my eyes get worse and worse as I get older, I'm probably going to end up buying me a new television, even though I don't need one in the not too distant future.
I mean, I know everyone's different, but I'm sure and Rob, I know you haven't moved anywhere in recent years, but as an apartment dweller, my first thing is always like, all right, cool space, like the apartment, great neighborhood. Where do I put the TV? Where do I put the TV? Because there are certain rooms where it's like, look at this beautiful, nice room. And they also do that in realty staging models where it's like, it's a living room with no television in it because it makes it look bigger somehow. And you're like, but where does the TV go? Because that's how the couches are all going to be rearranged. Like, where is the TV? Well, when I moved into the apartment that I live in now, I was like, ooh, I don't want reflection. The windows are going to be an issue. And I put the TV on the wrong wall. Like the feng shui was just weird. It took me 6 months to be like, you know what, just get over it, Sarah. Put some curtains up, close the curtains if you want to watch TV during the day. At night, it's less of an issue because, again, my OLED TV is nice and bright. But yeah, it's a real struggle. It's a real struggle. Yeah. All right. Well, Rob, it's looking more and more like the government does not really want TikTok to shut down on Sunday. We've talked about it ad nauseum, but things keep changing. What's the latest?
It's definitely looking like it. I mean, we mentioned on the Quick Hits yesterday's show that ByteDance might shut TikTok down completely if the U.S., if the SCOTUS basically doesn't give them a reprieve. And it doesn't look like they are from all the legal experts. But regardless, though, the Biden administration has announced that it is looking for ways to keep TikTok available in the U.S., even if the ban proceeds. An administration official was quoted saying, quote, Americans shouldn't expect to see TikTok suddenly banned on Sunday, adding that officials are exploring options for how to implement the law so TikTok does not go away or go dark on Sunday, end quote. So there's a lot going on here. The Biden administration is now coming out and saying we don't really want it to go away. Senator Ed Markey from Massachusetts introduced a bill on Monday where they want to extend the time for TikTok to figure something out an additional 270 days. President-elect Donald Trump has actually said that if nothing gets figured out before Sunday, he might actually, when he gets in office on Monday, do an executive order that that keeps TikTok around. So although this thing was voted on overwhelmingly so in a bipartisan way, and the president signed off on it, it looks like a lot of folks have a little bit of remorse because there are 170 million Americans on TikTok, 5 million U.S. businesses on TikTok. It's $24 billion in GDP is generated due to TikTok, and 224,000 jobs plus, because this was a 2023 number, are attributed to TikTok. So I don't think anyone is really happy about this thing potentially going away. And if I were a betting person, I would bet that come Monday, if not Tuesday, TikTok will still be around in much the same way that it is now.
It's interesting how big of a U-turn and how quick this happened. Like most people would have whiplash over this, but I'm curious to know what you were saying, Rob. Like, come next week. TikTok, I do believe, will still be around and running, but will it be running in some sort of like legal purgatory until like there's finalized arrangements of, hey, we're gonna exempt you from this law, or you just need to do this one minor thing, and that keeps you from running afoul of the law. I don't know. It's one of those things where, yeah, they might let it run, but it's going to be running under this weird cloud over its head, and I don't know if that's going to be any better for TikTok.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think it is going to be a situation where, at least for the next 9 months or so, because this is probably going to take a minute still to get this figured out, that the things that would cause the ban probably still cause the ban. I think that the government, whether it be the current administration or the next administration, will figure out a way. And I think there's even in the law some carve outs of how they can extend this like an additional 90 days or something like that. So I think that's going to happen. The next administration comes in and maybe a deal gets worked out. There have been, talks that, although ByteDance has disavowed any of this, there are fairly credible, conversations that have been told, we've been told that have been had that maybe even someone like an Elon Musk could potentially become a part owner of this or something like that, which kind of makes sense, seeing how big Tesla is in China and the relationship that he has with the Chinese government already. So, like I said, it does not look at all like the government really has the appetite to see this thing go. There are some who do, because the security, the national security issues, all those things are still there. But there are an awful lot of Americans who are going to be very, very upset if TikTok goes away. And the trump card to this, no pun intended, is that TikTok has basically been intimating that, hey, if the Supreme Court says that we're going to get banned, we're not just going to allow no one to no longer download updates to our application. We're going to shut it down in the United States. So that potentially may make things move a little quicker, because it's like it's kind of like almost ByteDance is playing.
Chicken.
They're playing,
maybe, but
yeah.
I would also say that Trump, at least from his previous stint as president, loves having leverage points, and I do not put this beyond the incoming administration using this as a leverage point for a wider trade discussion with the Chinese government. So as one of a multitude of things, I could see this as being sort of a package. We will allow this, and you will allow that as part of as some sort of trade agreement between the two countries.
I can see that.
Yeah, as you mentioned, Roger, this has moved so quickly. I think there's still, it's like there are a variety of folks in play here. There are the people on one side who are like, who cares? TikTok isn't it just a bunch of Gen Zers dancing and or like selling some green juice, or they can figure it out. There's obviously a lot more to that. Then you've got the folks who are like, no, I mean, sure, it's that if you want it to be that, but it's also where you get news information. There are a lot of legitimate companies who use TikTok in very creative and informative ways. So there's that. Then there's the folks saying, that's all good, but what's the Chinese contingency? ByteDance, they're not being truthful that TikTok is truly independent, and then you have ByteDance / TikTok itself being like, you know what? Then we'll just pull out all together. And how do you like that? And now we're kind of getting into the well, maybe not. Let's not do that, because so many people are actually going to be affected.
If you asked me back in 2004, like the heyday of Friendster switching over to MySpace, if you asked me that social media platform would be a geopolitical flashpoint in the future, I would have never believed you, because in many ways, all the issues surrounding TikTok are of a geopolitical nature, right? If TikTok came out of a company out of Florida, no one would care, or if it came out of somewhere in Europe, it wouldn't really be an issue, or even Latin America or some other country. But because it is China, it has all this baggage attached to it that you cannot neatly just sort of snip away. And and as compelling as TikTok is, honestly, if it went away, people would adapt to other things. The one thing you don't have as that audience you've built up. You would have to start over. And honestly, like most things, like cleaning my house, you don't want to start over. You just want to keep going with the momentum you have until someone forces you.
And let's be honest. I mean, most of the Instagram folks that I follow that are clearly on Instagram to make money, this is their livelihood, or at least some portion of it. They all have bigger followings on TikTok. TikTok is just the bigger market for a lot of the stuff. If you do it right, and yeah, the TikTok algo is very infectious, which is why I don't open TikTok all that often, because I lose hours of my day.
The only way this suddenly doesn't become an issue is if the world falls into a major recession and no one has money to spend on anything. So TikTok might still be around, but I think without the commerce aspect where people have the available cash to buy and sell and do all those things that make TikTok such a fruitful economic flea market of things. That's the only other way I ever see this could play out. If not for some sort of national level détente between China and the U.S.
So if TikTok were to somehow go away Sunday, I think of the big social media platforms, it is the one that people would get over most quickly for this reason. TikTok basically introduced a mechanism to where it's not about who you follow. They are deciding, based off of what you've looked at before and where you spent your time, this is what we think you need to see. So one of the things that people like about TikTok is that you can go viral on it significantly easier than you can Instagram or YouTube. But because people don't really follow folks on TikTok like they do on Instagram, like they do on YouTube, if it were to go away, people would be upset. But it's not like they're not going to get their fix of social media dopamine someplace else. They'll just go to other applications. And I think we're going to talk about some of those a little bit later in the show. But I do think that if TikTok were to go away, unlike an Instagram, unlike an X, definitely unlike a YouTube, I think that people will get over it quicker just because they don't necessarily follow anybody specifically on that platform in the way that they do on the other platforms.
Yeah, I follow more than a handful of folks on TikTok. I don't post anything on TikTok. I mean, I'm there, but I'm a lurker, occasional hearter or commenter. But it's true, Rob. It's mostly what I see is just sort of like, oh, yes, this is vaguely related to what I've seen before, because TikTok is like, oh, we know Sarah likes, gymnastic videos or videos of dogs being saved from ponds, whatever it is. I mean, there's a video for me.
TikTok will be one of those things for the history books where people will write at length about social media, and TikTok, Facebook, and X will be both sort of object discussions about how these things swayed humanity.
Yeah, I was actually reading a comment on Threads of all places, and it said that TikTok is probably going to be a big letdown like Y2K. Nothing happens. It's like there's all this talk about it. Everybody's up in arms and nothing happens. We wake up Sunday. It is still here. We're still using it.
The computer's turned on. Yeah.
The earth does not come to a screeching halt because TikTok is no longer available to us.
Well, you might have thoughts about TikTok. You might not have thoughts about TikTok, but you might have thoughts about something that we talk about on any of our shows. And if that is you, we want to hear about it. Let us know in our subreddit. That's a great way to submit stories, vote on other stories, and let us know what you care about, what piques your interest. Reddit.com/r/Daily Tech News Show. All right, so TikTok facing that potential U.S. ban January 19th. We're aware of that. However, we've also been aware of RedNote, which apparently has seen a rather large uptick. This is a Chinese social app, saw 700,000 rather new downloads in just a few days. A lot of people kind of hedging their bets, thinking, okay, if TikTok does go away, what's the new hot app? The shift has seen a probably for sure not coincidental surge in Mandarin learners on Duolingo, which has no ties to RedNote, but just for folks who are interested in learning Mandarin, that's up 216% on Duolingo from last year. So probably, let's assume, reflecting at least some American interest in RedNote's predominantly Chinese content. Chinese users are also sharing TikTok trends and some slang, with many welcoming what they are calling the TikTok refugees. But Roger, there's kind of more to this, right?
Yeah. So as with all things, there are more things going on than what you see at the surface. Now, fearful of the influx of these foreign users to what traditionally had been the Chinese-only platform, restricted content has been making its way through the platform. In fact, there have been a couple of rabble-rousers on the platform. Drew Pavlo from Australia, who's a very big anti-CCP government
that would
proponent.
Be restricted content, right?
Restricted, yeah, like anything that criticizes the central government,
the Chinese government,
disparaging the central government, bringing up Tiananmen Square, and a bunch of other things that are considered verboten on the platform. People have been putting it out there. So in the interest of maintaining social harmony, the Chinese authorities have intimated they may force the platform to start segregating users based on their IP. Now, this hasn't gone down well for Chinese Americans or Chinese citizens who live in the U.S. Because they use the app to keep track of social, cultural trends going back on China. Just like watching shows from the old country, trying to keep abreast. And they are a little bummed that suddenly all these new American users are coming in and ruining the platform for everyone, mostly them. But it's very interesting that there is a definite fear of cultural contagion, where there is an influence of all these outsiders coming in, putting in thoughts and other ideas that may not sit well with the central government, which in a way is kind of what the fear of TikTok has been by the U.S. government. It is a foreign influence.
Yeah, it kind of goes both ways. If RedNote, which is obviously enjoying a surge in popularity, could it just move its headquarters somewhere else?
Well, then how would you serve the Chinese customer base, which is
they would just get blocked? Yeah.
It is one of the, again, this is one of those things. If you asked me 2004, 2005, social media is going to be this geopolitical flashpoint. You just wait. I would have totally laughed in myself's face, in my own face, because it seems ridiculous on the face of it. But when you realize that social media has taken the place of television and radio and newspapers as this predominant media exchange platform for so many people and so many cultures, you can see the fear, especially of national and national, but also subnational governments about their reach. I'm curious to know what happens if they do segregate. That means then all these people who flocked over, will these still be subjected to the same types of media or speech restrictions that they would have had if they were Chinese citizens?
So for example, like the TikTok refugees, let's say RedNote can become some form of what TikTok was, assuming that TikTok goes away. Let's just use that scenario as an example. Does RedNote really care what anyone is doing and saying if they feel that Chinese citizens have a very different experience?
Or do they try to, like, kind of doing what you were saying, Sarah, they pivot and they break off and they create a separate entity that lives somewhere else outside of China, that is not a Chinese entity, but it's a Korean or Thai or Singaporean, and all those assets are in that country, and so they could have a TikTok competitor that people would flock to, and they wouldn't have these same issues that TikTok has been having, because TikTok is domiciled, well, not in China, but there are a lot of strings still leaning back to the mainland.
I also wonder. So I know if you are a content creator, and we're in the business too. It is very important to understand where your audience is, how to serve certain audiences on a TikTok, on an Instagram, on a YouTube, on X, so on and so forth. A lot of people aren't doing that full time. I wonder how much the fatigue of all of this is going to bounce people out of social networks altogether. I feel that on some level. I mean, I was very, very prolific on Twitter back in the day, in the very, very early days, and, and Facebook as well, to some extent. And as the years have gone on, and there have been more and more like, oh, this is the new hot thing. No, this is the new hot thing over here. You gotta do the new hot thing over here. There is a point where I think some people just say, what is that? What is all this? What's it all about? If you're making money, that's one thing. But if you're consuming, I think that it's easy to just sort of like see the new flashy thing and do something else.
So, it's interesting you say that, because it's still in the early stages. So if RedNote was to say make an American version, that's everything's there. It's a completely separate company based in the U.S. The data is stored in the U.S. and all that, but because it's in the early stages, you don't have to deal with all the connective tissue that TikTok would have, like just kind of wholesaling it out of their hands. I don't know, and they would just get like some like 10%, 12% cut of whatever revenue the American makes.
I'm really wondering, why are so many Americans flocking to RedNote in the first place? Because it poses the exact same issues that we have with TikTok. I think a lot of people think that the ban is specifically a TikTok ban. It is not a specific TikTok ban. It's about any company that does the kind of things that TikTok can do, and is based in, I won't say based in China, but based somewhere that is adversarial to the United States, which China is. So I'm kind of flabbergasted that so many people are going to RedNote when that it is a Chinese app, because the interfaces are in Mandarin. I mean, there are interfaces that people are literally having to go take screenshots and then go look up what that says so they know what to click on.
I
think learning Mandarin. What's it all about?
I think it's two things. One, people are mentioning it, and so people are checking it out. They're curious, like, hey, what is this stuff? What is this RedNote everyone's talking about? Let me check it out. Two, it just might be sort of a rage action, like I'm sick of the government telling me I'm going to go over here. Where
if it is the latter, that is not a well thought out plan, because the very thing that you are upset with could absolutely happen to RedNote.
I have learned in the past 40 years of my existence that humanity oftentimes does not act in its own self-interest.
That is very true.
Or in a logical, reasonable way. When, especially with social media, everything's around a little bit of emotional, and an emotion. I'm doing things like you were saying for a dopamine hit. So I'm watching things that make me happy, excited. And when those things are taken away from you, like anyone else, you would just get very upset and sort of emotionally, forget this. I'm going to go over here and see how you like it then. It's like.
But that kind of goes back to my previous point is, the sort of like, all right, we're done with this. Here's the cool new thing. Now we all do this. That feels very high school. And, that I am also a high school person at heart. So, I'm definitely, I get drawn into this, but at a certain point, I wonder, does the popularity of a TikTok and whatever replaces TikTok and whatever places the replacement of TikTok, the interest just start to wane because people are tired?
The one thing outside of TikTok, but social media more broadly, is that we went through a phase where it was very quick to jump from one to the next platform. But Facebook's been around since the mid 2000s. Like it's been a
Yeah, I mean, it was college only when I first heard about it, and when it opened up, I was sort of like, okay, let's.
But that was like
get on
2000.
board of the college people network. I'm already out of college.
I mean, you're looking at
change quick.
I would have expected something else to have bypassed Facebook by now, and it hasn't. And I think TikTok is sort of same thing with X. As much as people might have issues with the way X is currently run and the current policies he's had, it's still a really big player, and a lot of people still use it. People have said, like, I'm going to move over to Blue Sky. I'm going to go to Massa. I'm going to go to Threads. Yeah. But it's not at the scale that you would have thought, like, back, 15 years ago. It's like, oh, I'm going to jump on this new platform. I think it's because when in life, when you build up enough stuff, you're sort of reluctant to try to shift everything over without at least trying some mitigating try to mitigate the issues first, right? I don't want to move homes because moving is such a pain in the butt. So I'm going to go out and see if I can talk to my neighbor and come to agreement so we're not always yelling at each other or something like that. There's sort of there's an inertia to having to move social media platforms. And I think TikTok is sort of in that gravitational well of like, yeah, it's really hard. I set up everything. I know how to monetize. I know how to sell. I know how to pitch. I know how to pick up followers.
Yeah.
I also think that the note you made about feeling like Facebook would have been replaced before because it replaced MySpace, which replaced Friendster, every very cyclical kind of thing. I don't think people want another Facebook. Facebook is there because it still is there, and sure, the company makes some changes, but Meta as a whole does a lot more stuff outside of Facebook than it ever did, and I don't think people care enough about having that Facebook alternative. Some people don't want to do Meta stuff because they don't want to do Meta stuff, and that's kind of a different conversation, but I think Facebook is sort of here to stay. And I think the population of Facebook is, going to continue to age.
Yeah. And it will get old, and it will be, the lions or caros of the diner set.
I very rarely use Facebook, but if I need to get a hold of family almost instantaneously, Facebook is the first place I go. Why? Because everyone's on it. I can hit everybody up on Messenger. I can put something on my page that people will see because they're connected to me and follow my stuff that I put out once every 2 or 3 months. And it just works for what it is. So I agree with you on that, Sarah. Facebook's not going anywhere.
Yeah. All right. Well, we have we've circled the drain of Intel, wondering how long the company can survive. Turns out it probably has some longevity, Roger.
Yeah, and I just want to make a quick note. If you want to know more about RedNote and what it means to the Chinese American community, Tom had a conversation regarding RedNote today with Tony Wang on DTNS briefing. So if you want to get a fuller picture of this whole RedNote, what it means, what it was before all these TikTok refugees showed up on it, listen to that conversation. It's today's DTNS briefing with Tom and Tony Wang.
Very, very cool. Tony, former colleague of Tom and I over at Twit TV, and wonderful human, and always has good thoughts.
Yeah, and he's been using RedNote for the past 8 years, so he has a lot to tell you. But on the story of Intel has taken a lot of lumps lately, right? They their 18A fab process, the one that they were building their future, like we're gonna fab for other companies. It's going to be part of our core business. Hasn't worked out as well as they wanted to. The previous CEO, Gelsinger, was shown unceremoniously the exit, and they had corrosion issues with their 13th and 14th generation processors in the middle of last year, which caused basically at certain voltages and certain speeds, the connecting pins would start to corrode. So you would need to underclock and undervolt these really expensive processors that you bought because they could be overclocked and overvolted to run at high speeds, sort of leaving a lot of people very unhappy. But Intel has sort of scored a win today. They got their latest GPU, the Intel Arc B570 GPU, which is a lower clocked version of the very well received Arc B580 GPU, just with 2 Xe cores disabled. What's interesting is Intel, for the longest time, has sort of been kind of a lagger in the GPU field, but they've purposely targeted the lower end, the budget market segment within the past couple of years. And what's interesting is NVIDIA sort of claimed that the upper tier, and AMD is kind of focused, at least with their latest GPUs, in the middle segment. So you sort of have this sort of three layers of categories. You have the high end, super high performance. I can drop $2,500 on a GPU and it doesn't bother me. Then you have the more cost conscious, but still want performance better than average performance. Stay in from the mid range, and then for the budget, it's like, yeah, I want to play these games. But I do have a budget. I can't spend more than $250. This card comes at $220, one of the cheapest good performing GPUs that I have seen in a long time. And I think it's good news for Intel, but I'm wondering if there really is any sort of competition when you have three companies just sort of self-sort into their respective dollar price segments in the category where, in the processor CPU market, Intel and AMD both compete in the budget, the mid-range, and the high end. Is there any real competition on this, or is this just how things shake out in the future, where companies just operate at a certain price niche and people just go, oh, hey, I have more money now, I'll go with, kind of the GM way. If you wanted the most expensive luxurious car, you went with the Cadillac. Didn't have that, you went down to a Buick or an Oldsmobile, and if you were just budget conscious, you'd pick up a Chevy.
I think this is a good move, and it's a good price point for Intel, because when you think about the type of person that's going to be doing this, clearly you're going to have some folks who, Roger, you and I are the demographic for this. It's Sarah, you as well, as far as like our age. We've been tinkering and doing things with computers for decades. And
Rob, I'm 25 years old.
That is true. So I'll go back to Roger and I, but we may go out and spend $1,000 on a graphic card. But for a lot of folks who want to just get into building their own PCs and, making their own gaming rig, they can't spend $1,000 on a graphic card. They may not even have $1,000 to spend on the total PC, including the monitor. So at $219, it's kind of one of those things to where, can it play this game? Does it look okay? When I play this game? And if the answer to that is yes, I think that Intel might hit with this, because there are a lot of folks who want to upgrade a PC. They're just not going to go out and spend $1,000, $1,500, $2,000 on a graphic card to play a new game. They're just simply not going to do that. It's not even in the realm of possibility. Whereas a $219 card to allow you to keep your rig, that is something that a lot of people would do.
It's interesting to notice that within the past 3 years, a lot of the video, especially with NVIDIA, the prices have been trending higher. Now, I will say that they are more capable. They require a lot more transistors. They require a lot more production work to build them. But it's sort of like, it's just PC, being a PC enthusiast become a progressively more expensive hobby. Like, when I didn't have kids and I wasn't married, it was very easy to just find the extra cash to buy new hard drives, whatever, a processor upgrade, motherboard upgrade, case upgrade. But but even looking back on that, there were a lot of budget options that were very appealing to me. You could find a good video card for video gaming, or even productivity work like Adobe Creative Cloud for under $200, and they worked well. They weren't the best performing, and the high end was in the $300 range. But now it's like $500-$600, and that's just the upper mid. And now you're looking at well over $1,000 if you really want to spend for performance.
Some of them go up to $2,000. So they're really, really expensive. So like I said, I kind of like this. And the other thing too, a lot of folks are saying, Intel, they're doomed. They're going away. Intel's not going anywhere. They just got darn near $8 billion from the government as part of the CHIPS Act. And I live from a super foundry that they are actively working on right now. Companies that, that are going out of business don't tend to build, billion-dollar buildings. So I think that Intel, they are struggling. There's no doubt about that. Yeah. But they're going to get it figured out, and they will come out with something.
Yeah, and oftentimes it does take sort of a kind of a touch grass moment for a company to reorganize and refocus its efforts into something more sustainable. I mean, IBM went through that, in the late '80s, early '90s, when the PC compatible market literally passed them by, and they had to rethink what they wanted to do and how they were going to do it. And I think it's Intel's time too. But this is good news, if small. Good news for the company.
Well, on to our mailbag. Allison Sheridan, hi Allison, had some thoughts on Meta's new plan to remove underperforming workers. We talked about this earlier in the week. Obviously, a lot of people out there saying, "Oh, this is just Meta trying to get rid of folks who do their job, but not as well as they should do it." Allison says, I had a completely different take on what Zuckerberg announced. I worked in a massive, which is, 60,000 plus person government contracting job. And it was hard and tedious to get rid of a low performer. As a manager, have to go through months and months, if not years, of performance improvement plans, PIPs. Some of you know about that. I've had to deliver them and I've had to receive them. Reviews by human resources and constant meetings and monitoring of employees. Allison makes the point that, in particular situations, somebody who is underperforming really is underperforming and shouldn't be working at the company anymore. They're not doing their job effectively, and in some cases, kind of trying to get away with not doing it at all. The only poor performer I did get rid of stole money from the company. This is Allison's story. Bought a transmission for his daughter's car on the company credit card. Even then, they gave him the opportunity to pay it back and not fire him, but then he didn't pay it back. Allison says, this is a long way of saying that my brain interpreted Zuck's words as we're going to get rid of bureaucracy in the middle and make it easier to fire people who stink at what they do.
I sort of agree with Allison, but I also disagree because there's a reason for the bureaucracy. Unless you have a bunch of C-suite people who love micromanaging people and workers who love to be micromanaged, you're going to be up to your elbows in figuring out how to deal with people. Allison mentioned 60,000 people. This is just a problem of having a lot of people. When you have a company that's only
then
5
people are going to go under the radar.
Yeah,
for sure.
I mean, unless you staff it with cyborgs or robots that can keep an eye and meticulously do all that. I mean, that's just people used to complain about this with large American companies. GM, IBM, a few banks. When you get to a certain size, you cannot help but behave like a government because that's just kind of the way society, that social system organizes. You cannot pretend to have, 30 or, 33,000, even 3,000 employees and pretend it's a company of 300 people, right? Those systems don't necessarily work with a workforce that large.
I mean, any management position I've ever been in, which is not a company of this size at all, it's hard to keep track of 10 people. It's like, so somebody's got an excuse, somebody's sick, somebody, there's somebody's underperforming. It's like, that's a hard job for a manager.
I can attest. I understand where Allison is coming from. Having been a manager at a large company, there's a lot of truth to what she's saying. Now, it wasn't a government contractor, so it wasn't necessarily that hard to let a low performer go. But you do go through. You're going to go on a performance and a PIP before we just let you go unless it's something egregious, because a lot of times is that you've put a lot of training into a person. They could just be having a bad couple months and maybe you can turn it around. And sometimes it's easier to do that than it is to go and try to replace them. So I get where she's coming from. I'm probably like you, Roger. I fall kind of in the middle of this. And, it should be a little easier in some ways, but not too easy to where you just, I didn't like that piece of code that you wrote today. You got to go, unless they were already on something, because some folks will be pretty cutthroat with it.
If you don't code, you got to go.
You got to go. So, folks, remember, you can send your comments to feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com if you would like, Allison would like to send in something that you've heard about on the show, if you've got some thoughts. So once again, feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com. And also, during the show, you've been submitting titles. We have a couple of them. Let's start off with from Saray TW. You can OLED a TV to viewers, but you can't make them see.
Get it? OLED. Get it?
Yeah, you can OLED
Right.
yeah.
Something about horse to water. Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Larry in Atlanta has TikTok is calling the government's bluff.
Hmm. Yep.
And then we also have TikTok game of chicken from Clinton Woodward. So Sarah, I like Saray's, but what did we go with today?
We actually went with, and thanks to everybody for submitting over at showbot.tv /GTNS, TikTok game of chicken. I don't even really, how did the game, I know what the game of chicken, and thank you to you, Clinton Woodward and everybody else. What was the game of chicken originally? Wasn't it sort of you're like hitting each other's legs somewhere?
No, the original way I learned of it was it Greece where you can no it wasn't Greece where you basically drive your car towards the other person and whoever blinks first and swerves out of the way loses.
They're the chicken. I thought it was like maybe I'm thinking of like a Disney movie or something. I thought it was like people on like a plank and like you're like hitting
they
each
threw
other
chickens
and
at each other.
No, nobody was a chicken. They were humans, but it was same.
I mean, that's the way I learned it. That was like a masculine display of bravado. Like you wouldn't flinch, and that was kind of like who blinks first.
Which is
exactly.
what's the James Dean Natalie Wood movie?
Rebel Without a Cause.
Didn't they play a game of car chicken?
I think there was a lot of movies with car chicken. That's just like that's like a young male trope at this point. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't have to be car, but it's like other terms is like a Mexican standoff or who blinks first or whatever. Like it's all about who makes the first move. As the situation
well, I mean, pretty much every
unbearable.
Western ends with the same scene, right? Where it's like the two, like the protagonist and the antagonist with the guns. Like, all right, who will shoot first?
Yeah, high noon. That's the whole thing about the shootout, right? Who clears leather first and gets aims correctly and gets a bullet to hit the target.
I do believe that with TikTok, that's kind of what they're doing, because I don't believe that a lot of Americans who know about the TikTok ban really know how the TikTok ban is coming about. TikTok, if ByteDance doesn't do anything on Sunday, everybody who already has TikTok installed will still have it installed and will still be able to use TikTok on Monday. Mm-hmm. I don't think a lot of people know that. I think a lot of people think that, it's being banned and it's going away. So I just think that what ByteDance is doing, they're kind of leaning in. Hey, if you're gonna ban us, we're gonna go ahead and shut this down. So you actually get the brunt of 170 million Americans saying, hey, where did my TikTok go? So from that standpoint, it really does feel like chicken. It's like, hey, if you're going to do this, we're going to do this. Your move.
I was about to say, like, I think TikTok understands how that game is played now. Like, so this is what we do. This is how we force the issue with everyone. And if they win, they played their hands well. If they lose, they made a good bet, but they lost. But we'll see next week.
Well, I ate pad thai with chicken last night, and I had more for leftovers this morning. So
I
think it's all related somehow. Doesn't that sound good? I was like, I haven't had Thai food in like a million years. Let's do this.
I mean, I have it's weird. There are more Thai restaurants in my city than Chinese restaurants, which is like completely weird since there are more Chinese people in the city than Thai. But who knows? Who knows?
Am I the only one who gets my Thai food extra not hot? I just
yes.
I like Thai food. I do not like the heat. So It's like
Now, is it like curry, or you just don't like spice in general?
So I don't mind a little bit of kick, but if something is really spicy, it just, what it does to my stomach after I eat it is just not worth it to me. So for me, it's more of, I just don't like the hours after consuming it. It wasn't that it was too hot for me to eat. It was just too hot for my stomach to keep me comfortable. So I go and it's like, I want no heat. Give me packs of sauce that I can put the heat on it to my liking. Don't cook that stuff in there.
I actually got, now I am really showing my cards of my Uber Eats orders lately, but a few days ago, I just wanted ramen. And I live in Koreatown. So, I mean, there's a ramen shop on every corner. So it's very easy to get. And this one place that I had never been to before, I was like, let's try a new place. The options were like not spicy, low spice, medium spice, extra spice. Now, normally I'd be like, extra spice, I can handle it. But I was like, I don't know these people. And I've been burned before. So I went with medium, and I'm glad I did, because it was hot. It was hot.
It's just weird because so many different people, unless you use the Scoville scale, no one ever really gives you an idea when they say light, medium, or spicy, right? Because like, to me, what's considered spicy is way too spicy for my wife. Like, anything that's low spice, like I don't feel anything. She says it's too spicy. And I said, like, it's
I
hard
have a
to
friend
judge.
who's like, he had, it's not an allergy. It's like an actual, there's some other term for he can't handle spice. And it's like like a legit issue. Like it's not like a throat thing, but just sort of like, a very deep, uncomfortable, sweating, face is red, no good. And I'm like, oh man, spice is so fun. But even I have my limits. I'm like, you can spice me out of the room if you want to.
Yeah, I have had some spicy Thai before, to where as I was eating it, you thought that I was on a treadmill running as hard as I could. It's like, man, I need to take my shirt off. I mean, I felt like I was playing basketball. It's like, why do I feel like I'm working out eating this food? And it's like,
that's
no, I don't want
fun.
that.
Like to sweat your pores out.
That's what I like to do. I'm like, it's fun. We're exercising. Rob's like, not 4 hours from now.
No. That just doesn't work for me.
Well, what does work is our patrons. Everybody who supports us on Twitch, on YouTube, on Patreon. And we've got some folks to shout out today, don't we, Raj?
Yes, we do. Let's check out the Twitch chat that's been supporting us. PC Mousy cheered us on with 50 bits. Zoe Brings Bacon also cheered us on with bits. Ooh. And Minion Monkey subscribed for 12 months at tier 1, and they've been subscribed for 12 months. We got new patron raises. This actually from yesterday's show, but we forgot to call them out. So I wanted to call them out today. Condine and David, they both gave us raises last show. So thank you both.
Condine and David. Appreciate that. Thank you so much for the support and for doubling down on us. Well, folks, we are wrapping up this episode of DTNS Live, but we do it Monday through Friday, and we'll be back tomorrow with Len Peralta drawing the top tech stories. Reminder, you can watch us live Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern. That is 2100 at UTC. You can find out more at dailytechnewsshow.com/live. We'll see you tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye, folks.
The DTNS family of podcasts, helping each other understand.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.